else in the Southern Review, among others. You can follow Ross on Twitter at Ross White. Does anyone watch Top Chef? I can only see a few of you. Top Chef, they have a challenge where they blindfold the chefs and then have them taste ingredients to judge the palate. And you'd think it'd be easy. I don't think it is. We tried it at home. If you blindfold someone and have them taste something, I think you forget that there are all kinds of other senses involved with it, and that it's very easy when you can't see, and you can't smell really, as you have something over your face, to lose sight of the taste of something. How our mind and our senses make up a full picture of our everyday life, of what we're eating and drinking, of how we're moving through the world, is something that I, at least, haven't thought about that much. And it makes me think a bit of Ross, because I've known him since 2006, and I've been a fan for almost that long, at least since 2008. We knew each other as friends before we knew each other as poets, which is one of the great ironies of going to an MFA program. It takes a little bit of time to get to know each other. Ross is I'm sure that you've guessed this, a very compassionate person. And he's so generous. He helps everyone in the poetry world by the grind, which is something that he came up with, it's really helped my work, and it's transformed, I think, a lot of other people, which creates community. He is one of the best editors of poetry that I've ever met. And when I was thinking about doing a chapbook, it was a very short list with Ross at the top of it. He's able to bring to other people's work an incredible eye, an incredible organization. He brings much more than that to his own work. One of the best things in the world is to know someone as a friend and then be able to taste the world through their poetic works. When you read Ross White, it's as if you're getting a full sensory experience. None of your senses are left out. It's not like being blindfolded. His work is not detailed enough to be stuffy. He brings that editor's eye to himself, and he leaves in just the right amount of everything. It's a great pleasure to read those books. As I read them, I forget that I know Ross. And I think being able to forget what you know about the world and to exist in something that's a total new literary landscape, especially when you're as close to a person as I am to Ross, is about the greatest compliment you can give a poet. The rest of what I know about him disappears, and the speaker of his work stand up and raise their hands to me, and I am enthralled in the poetic. He is a master craftsman, a master editor, a tremendous artist and poet. And even when he helps all of us and edits other people's work, he still has more energy and more genius and more artistic chops to give us in the way of poetry. I don't think it's too much to say that I love him as much as a poet as I do as a person. And if I only knew him through his books, he'd be very close to my heart. Please help me welcome Ross White.
Woo!
Thanks, Del. I am so honored to be here with y'all. I'm so honored to follow the poets who've already read tonight. You are amazing. You are so amazing. And I feel really lucky for the generosity of spirit that we've had here this week. It's been wonderful. I've put an accessibility copy of this reading in the group chat. So if at some point my voice gets a little bit annoying, then you just hop on over to the printed copy. It's all good. Now I can't remember who, and I'm embarrassed. Someone mentioned Michelangelo's David in a talk earlier this week. And I have a bunch of poems where Michelangelo's David just kind of shows up. Sometimes he's doing sinister stuff. Sometimes he's a little more chill. This is called In 27D. After hours of delay and a particularly long layover, the voice promising me clear blue skies sounds like I imagined God would when he asked me to forgive. And the stewardess pushing a cart toward me with her smart ruby lips, thick eyelashes, and unconventional snakeskin boots looks like I imagined Venus would if she wagged a finger at me, inviting me to something forbidden. Michelangelo's David, on the cover of the In-Flight magazine, flexes the chest I thought I'd have if I could work shame's 9 tails across my back enough to diet on grapes or bike to the gym. The housefly, the only one I've ever seen on a plane, caromming between seat backs like a fire drunk on its own heat, looks like I imagined I might if I died in a plane crash and was immediately shuttled back into the living body I deserve. If I close my eyes and let the engine noise drown out all this useless sense, I can hear Venus as a heron and see God as a never-ending chest of drawers, each one of the infinite shades of blue, can feel the surprising litheness of stretched snakeskin and smell brush burning on the prairie. And my next body is the wavering sunlight through the surface of water. So Maudelle mentioned the grind in that introduction, and I know a couple other people have talked about the grind this week, and I can't take credit for it, Del. I didn't invent the grind. It really came out of National Poetry Writing Month, which I think Maureen Thorson started. And while I was in grad school, Matthew Olsman, Zena Cardman, and Dilruba Ahmed, and Ruba's here tonight. Hi, Ruba. We decided that we would just send a new poem every day for a month. And we did. And it was one of the most exciting times of my writing life, seeing what those three were producing. And what we discovered was that trying to finish a new poem every day for a month, A, is painful, and B, it's a wonderful form of accountability to share with friends. And so that was October of 2007, and every month since then, the grind has run. We've now had over 1,300 people do it. There are 188 people grinding this month, which just blows me away. And to everyone who has the discipline to show up at the desk every day for a month or 2 months or a year, or in one case, like 7 years, I'm in awe of you because it's work, but it's so exciting to get to see it happen. So this is a poem from the grind. One thing that happens on the grind, particularly when you do it with friends, is you start talking back and forth in your poems. They become a conversation. And with some of my most wonderful friends, I'll steal a line. I straight up do it. I'm like, that's a good line. I'm going to borrow that. So I got to give them credit. This is Obad with a line from Julia Kolchinsky-Dasbach. And if you find in your heart a stint, if joy suffocates and the blood is still thick as liquor when you look out the window to the sun, if you see in its rising only new rage as a hammer sees only the stud, then I gift you this photograph. Your hair dyed red as a cherry, thumbs loose in twin shaka signs, wearing a t-shirt so stupid I won't, or can't repeat it here. You were happy once, or whoever took the photo must have thought you were happy in that moment. A look like you'd never made a list of disasters. Coal ash spills into the cool river of morning. Turkey vultures descend on a split possum. Underneath a precarious tanker, the whales swallow plastic. Go on. Exhaust yourself before the coffee drips into your mug. I'll wait. And I'll counter with this. Before you woke, a hummingbird like the phantom of loss crashed toward the feeder you hung beside the window, and I skimmed with the back of my hand your shoulder. When I pulled away, you said, more. Elegy for Youth. Gone is the florid notion of invincibility, which was nothing more than a blindfold on a bicyclist. Gone is the banal confidence, which was just mangrove in brackish water. Gone is the sorrowful boredom into which summers buried their spindly stingers and left lazy poisons. How I hated you, youth, and longed to be able to mangle my liver with delight and my lungs with city smog as soon as I could slip your sedate suburban grip. How I wished you'd unfurl like a maroon flag from some undiscovered nation, and winds would sweep me violently into valley forests full of whippoorwills and collared nightjars, or deposit me like discarded bottles in a steam-stained alley, struggling to remember all that happened before unforgiving dawn. Youth, how I hate you still, for having held you by the tender neck and thought only of wringing. So we've had some interesting conversations at lunchtime where we've ended up not just talking about poetry, but some of what's going on in contemporary poetry and some of the things that we marvel at, but then also some of the things that we are pushing back against. And one of the things I've been thinking about as we've been having those conversations is the number of poets who report that their teachers are telling them that they want them to write about just one topic. And they really seem to want to reduce their students to their trauma. And that breaks my heart because we are more than our traumas. And our poems are worlds with such potential. So these are my two sort of snarky poems about this idea that trauma should be a commodity. And that I think that's enacted on the internet a lot. So the second one's kind of an internet-y poem, but here's the first. Illness narrative. Because I am horrible, I don't care about your illness narrative. I am sick myself, of myself. And so magnolia hurls its white blossoms towards spring. And so the weevils stain the cotton with their young. Here, a new scarf, a crude wooden figurine of a long-nosed troll. My lungs are dark and stringy, contaminated by the nearby listless heart. And so fishermen wrench pollock from the sea and walleye from the river, and so pails fill with milk. Tell me a story that doesn't end in senseless trauma. I don't care what you have to go through to conjure it. And so the godwits thrust their bills into black shore, and so the grackl's black feathers stain blue skies, seeking a friendly branch. It is easier to invent than to listen. Through the window, I see the world, wondering how to stun us all with its magnificence. But everywhere, the wounded are walking and talking. And so the anchors find the waiting seabed, and so the moon rides up on its dark chariot. Tell me that story, the one where night lifts its lesser stars and strokes them like pets, and the incensed sun lashes its reflection to a hunk of rock revolving around Earth. And so all shadows will be reminders, enough sometimes to make me feel loved. And here's my snarky internet poem. Performativity. You see me, I know. You eye me. You scan columns of me and rows within the columns. You view photos of me and clock my doings, I know. Gawk at my breakfasts. Peep me, load me to get a load of my most recent outsized feeling, a rail against injustice, a barb toward the president, a hint of unnamed sickness I let slip. Oh God, it's exhausting showing all this. I know you empath so hard. Click like or heart to project your regard for my courage, necessary to dole out like scoops on a cone the harm befalling me daily. I know you strength me. You sorry that happened me. You sending a hug me. It's never enough to shutter the factory. Inside me is industry, manufacturing miseries. Your clicks the coal, your eyes the turbines. You engine me, assembly me, repackage and label me, distribute me where once the world brambled me, that tear not so deep, no more than a scratch. You salve the wound with oils and honey and milk and sometimes well-intentioned salt and hashtags and bravery, bravery, bravery. Okay, I want to end with two poems about joy, because this week has been a joy because I've been thinking a lot about the practice of joy. I felt really lucky to share some of those thoughts with you. Misdirection. We lay on a ratty blanket by the pond in the backyard. You faced the water to watch ripples set off by the skimmers. I faced out toward the trees, waiting for clarity after months of grief. You whispered, "Nothing about reality seems fuzzy anymore." We were still for a time. Two clouds crept away from each other, and the moon laid thin white enamel over your skin, pinpricks in your eyes. I could see the shapes of herons against the lightening sky. Behind you, 3 albino deer took tentative steps toward us. They lurched when you sighed and said, "It's the world. All the magic has gone out of it." You never saw them. I found I could not respond. I had doves, like refugees from a handkerchief or false-bottomed hat, in my throat. And this is my last poem. It's uh, it's a meditation on joy, by imagining a scene that has never existed and won't, but it's sort of uh, it's sort of a version of a perfect day. And I owe a big debt. Katie Hawthorne, I borrowed your AOL Instant Messenger screen name for the title of this poem. So thanks, Katie Hawthorne. Versus World. If I were careening down Broadway dressed in my Sunday suit, if my arms were out to either side, my hands extended, if my eyes shut, my head tilted, if my coruscating smile, the kind you'd see in an advertisement, if roses sloughed off my back and outstretched arms, if streamers and ribbons followed and the air a glitter, if the light fell such that no one in New York cast a shadow, if I were followed by wolves and playful malamutes, if the wolves wore velvet collars and the malamutes red kerchiefs, if I spun, if confetti in a million different colors from the skyscrapers, if every window in Manhattan open and the crowds roaring, if the people on the curbs and street corners tried to reach out to me, if they clapped, if they pointed, if they whistled, if everyone on the street corners wore fedoras and bowlers, if everyone had elbow patches on their coats, if I were in slow motion, ecstatic, and followed by wolves, if the roses and rose petals littered the streets behind me, if all of Manhattan made of rose petal, if I had no one to share it with, if I had no one I had to share it with. Thank you.
Thank you.